presidency is a job of huge power and responsibility. We like to think of our leaders as hyper-competent people uniquely suited for the world's most difficult job, but that's not always the case. Presidents are people too. For the entire length of their term, the commander-in-chief needs to be on call 24 hours a day, with no downtime. Unless they're doodling, of course. I'm kidding. Presidents spend a lot of time in tedious meetings absorbing dense information, and doodling can be something that helps them focus or at least combats restlessness. I'm a big believer in humanizing history, looking at these larger-than-life figures on a more personal level in order to better understand how history happens in real time. The things that these men scribbled on paper are incredibly interesting, and if nothing else, shows you what they were thinking at a given moment. I got the idea for this video from a fantastic Washington Post article that sorts presidential doodles from the most abstract to the most realistic. The article tackles it from an artistic perspective, however, and I thought it would be interesting to take a look at it in terms of what the drawings say about the president's personalities. Andrew Jackson, who I think I actually have never covered on the channel somehow, drew this funny little picture of an alligator. At first, I thought this was in reference to his rival John Quincy Adams, who famously owned an alligator, but apparently they were also associated with Jackson's military career and victory in the Battle of New Orleans. You'll notice that using doodles to reminisce about your physical or military prime is going to be a pretty common theme throughout this video. Theodore Roosevelt often drew playful pictures and letters that he wrote to his children and family. Here you can see what looks like a mom disciplining two little boys. These say a little less about Roosevelt, as they were made specifically to be given to someone rather than something that he just doodled during a meeting. Warren G. Harding's doodles are more of their time than any other president's, reflecting the Art Deco style that was popular in the 1920s and 30s. However, he also had this little doodle of some guy looking at an ostrich, so what do I know?
But in 1952, the American people wanted a change, and they brought it about with a landslide victory for General of the Army, Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Take a look at this self-portrait that Dwight Eisenhower drew on a White House memo, showing a muscular young Eisenhower complete with hair and a comically thin waistline. Clearly, Eisenhower was advocating for a snatched waist. I like this one because reminiscing about their physical prime seems to be such a cliche among older men, and seeing quite literally the most powerful man in the world doing this humanizes him significantly. In keeping with the drawing's quite masculine nature, there are also gunboats in the back, harkening back to Eisenhower's military career, much like Jackson did. If you have a keen eye, you may have noticed that the memo says Guatemala, whose president had been deposed by US-backed forces just one day prior. Here's another drawing done by Eisenhower which depicts a knife being broken in half with another knife. Perhaps he was thinking about disarming another country's military, or he just liked knives. In one of his drawings, John F. Kennedy pondered the question which would define the rest of the 1960s.
We are assisting in every way we properly can the people of South Vietnam, who with the greatest courage and with the under danger, are attempting to maintain their freedom. Now, this is an area where there is a good deal of danger, and it's a matter of information. We don't want to have information which is of assistance to the enemy, and it's a matter which I think will have to be worked out with the government of Vietnam, which bears the primary responsibility.
This is one of the more interesting drawings, in my opinion, with a million dots drawn around intersecting rectangles and the word Vietnam repeating throughout the page. Kennedy was famously thoughtful, and I can picture him just jotting this down while his mind wandered. I mentioned this in my recent Nixon video, but I'm really interested in thinking about what JFK's legacy would look like if he had survived and had to address the issues that ultimately led to the downfall of his successor. Kennedy is very romanticized because of his assassination, but this drawing is a reminder that when it comes to Vietnam, he ironically dodged a bullet.
As all presidents, Lyndon Johnson has sought this role, so he cannot complain of its rigors. He has assumed great personal control of the apparatus of government, and so the demands on his time and energy rise. The enormous pressures of schedule, problems, and decision burden his mind.
If you're familiar with this channel at all, you'll know that I'm obsessed with Lyndon Johnson. LBJ's eccentricities are well documented, but his doodles are even weirder. He often drew strange, misshapen creatures that you might expect to find in the notebooks of a bored high school student. I enjoy the way he incorporates the White House stationery logo at the top of the paper into a lot of his drawings. Most of LBJ's doodles don't really point to much besides him being a pretty weird, if creative guy, but my personal favorite is his drawing of Robert F. Kennedy. Johnson and Kennedy, of course, hated each other, and it's obvious that the threat of his former attorney general primarying him loomed large over his already tumultuous presidency. This drawing in particular reflects Johnson's paranoia and feeling that everybody was out to get him. Richard Nixon was also famously paranoid, but his drawings reflect a very different side of his personality, with complex geometric shapes composed of countless straight lines. Nixon was a gifted student and talented piano player, and the precision in which he used and his approach to things are reflected in his doodling.
For those who've abandoned hope, we'll restore hope and we'll welcome them into a great national crusade to make America great again.
Ronald Reagan summed himself up pretty well in his drawings, intentionally or not. This paper features a younger Reagan calling back to his days acting in westerns. Some of the figures in the drawings are ones that Reagan often repeated throughout his life. Here's a few other ones that Reagan made with a couple familiar faces. Clearly, Mr. Reagan thought pretty highly of himself, just given the way that he draws his self-portraits. But in all seriousness, Reagan does cast himself as some sort of perfect Americana figure. From acting in westerns, a fictional romanticized version of the past, to running the original Make America Great Again campaign, it appears Reagan sees himself as representing a hero from a simpler time. While George W. Bush is famous for his post-presidency painting career, he clearly wasn't much of an artist while in the Oval. Bush's secretary had asked him to sign a few letters, and the president responded with this note, which features just a simple sad face informing her that one of the intended recipients had passed away. This speaks to George W. Bush just being a pretty regular guy. Honestly, nothing too fancy, just a sad face. While he was a US Senator, Barack Obama made a couple drawings of his Senate colleagues. Unlike the other doodles featured, these were made specifically for public view as they were being donated to charity. The drawing features Senators Chuck Schumer, Harry Reid, Dianne Feinstein, and Ted Kennedy. These are surprisingly good caricatures, and I bet that Obama feels pretty good about them himself. Let me be clear. Which drawings do you think said the most about their respective presidents? Make sure to let me know in the comment section down below, and like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.